Excellent. Well, Ella, thank you so much and welcome back to the States. I know that you have been traveling all over the world, so we're so glad to have you on the Central Time and in person with us tonight. But before we get started, I'd love it if you took a little bit of time to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started writing.
Oh, my Lord. Well, the short story is I've been practicing law for 20 years. And I was in the military practicing law. Before that, I was a university professor of political science. I taught things like U.S. foreign policy and compared totalitarian systems and Western European political systems, that kind of stuff. Went to law school, got back in, practiced for 20 years, I guess. And then when I was 58, I was sick of it. I was sick of clients. I was sick of everything. And I wanted to find something else to do. And then all of a sudden I had a video playing in my head of this really angry Regency lady. Because I thought I'd write something, but I thought I would write our 5-year plan to buying the boat.
Okay.
It was nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
But this video kept playing in my head. And so I wrote some paragraphs down. And then I wrote some more down. And I said to my husband, I think I'm going to write a Regency romance. And he said, you could do that. He really regretted saying that for a long time. And a month later, I had a 100,000-word manuscript. And I didn't know what to do with it. So I got on the CompuServe Writers Forum. And that was a little bit helpful because someone said, have you joined RWA? And I said, what's RWA? And they said, Romance Writers of America. And I said, I've never heard of it. But I joined. And because I already had a completed manuscript, I went immediately to, I think it was Pro at that time. Or it was, no. Brendan, this is 12 years ago now. Brendan Novak's auction was going on. And I bid on an agent to review my manuscript. Now, I had no idea, of course, that agents specialize in different genres. Mm-hmm. And they didn't say anything on the website about that. So she rejected me. And so I got that to get to Pro. And then, but I asked her, I said, and she told me she didn't rep my genre. And I said, do you think I'll be published? And she said, yeah, I think you will be. So anyway, 8 months after I wrote the book, after I started writing the book, I had an agent. And 8 months after that, I had my first 3-book contract with Kensington. I had an online friend of mine. She's become Barbara Rogan, who has been an agent and an author and everything else in publishing. And she said, now it will take you 5 years to get published. And I said, I'm 58. I don't have 5 years. I want to be published I'm 60. And a month before I turned 60, my first book came out.
Incredible.
And nothing, it hasn't stopped. So that was The Marriage Game. And then we moved on to The Worthingtons. So
have you always had that sort of like, if I put my mind to it, I'm going to get it done sort of added like personality?
Yes. Well, I mean, I was in the Army. I was a lawyer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I've been those when I was young. My father's father, the only thing he ever told me that was helpful was spit in one hand and wish in the other and see which one gets full faster. And that has been kind of my principle when it comes to getting things done. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. My other grandfather taught me since I had been born into privilege, I needed to give back. So those are basically principles. So one taught me kind of how to do it, and the other taught me what to do.
I love that. These are very important pieces to the Ella puzzle.
It explains a lot.
Yeah, I love it though. So I love that you had this like epiphany moment where this story just sort of poured out of you. It came to you in this flash, and then you were writing the words down, and it all just like flowed out. But that comes from a skill of either having been a writer because you were a lawyer, so you're clearly writing lots of briefs, and also were you a big reader? Were you like
Oh, I've been reading since I was 3.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was reading Jane Austen when I was in 6th grade.
Oh my goodness.
And reason I more than I liked Charlotte Bronte was because I really, in 6th grade, I really didn't understand Wuthering Heights.
Mm-hmm.
You could read the words, but the context was a little beyond me at the time.
Right.
And I also have a master's degree in political science. And so I was pumping out 200-page papers.
Constantly.
You know,
Yeah.
so yeah. So it teaches you the skill to sit down and do it. Which is not a skill. It's a skill I think you can teach yourself, but
Mm-hmm.
I came to this profession knowing how to do that.
I love that. Were you
knowing how to research?
Well, and especially research is such a, it's such a vital part of historical, but it's also like probably one of the hardest things to pull yourself out of, to actually put the words down, because you always want to keep reading everything.
Oh, I remember when I was an undergrad, we would sit in the stacks and
Mm-hmm.
I found Joyce's books, letters to his wife, and I would kind of put them in my words and send them to my boyfriend at the time, he was employed.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband, almost 40 years. And we didn't have back then. We were just writing letters.
That's so sweet.
And and how James Joyce got near any of my international political stuff, I don't know, but he always managed to pop up.
He was always there.
He was always kind of there. So yeah, it was. But yeah, so I had been doing this kind of stuff for years,
mm-hmm.
And so the mechanics, the ability to write, and the ability and sit down for long periods at a time and write, and the ability to research, or skills I already had. Now I had to learn craft.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone starts out head hopping, and everyone starts out, with all sorts of bad habits that you have to relearn. Lawyers, for example, it's very common. And this was pointed out to me actually in the CompuServe forums. I joined for a brief time their critique part. And they said, but she said she has a green dress 3 times. And I'm like, oh yeah, because that's what you do as a lawyer.
Mm-hmm. Just keep repeating.
Right. You tell someone what you're going to say, you say it, you tell them what you're saying again. And that's
mm-hmm.
military as well. You're telling
right.
different classes. So yeah, you have to kind of relearn how to do different things like that. But yeah, the basic foundation was already there.
That's cool. Who was your first book boyfriend or girlfriend?
That's a really good question. I can't tell you because it's been so long. Probably I want to say it was, oh God, who is the hero in Frederica, the Georgia Hare book? Does anyone remember?
Well, that's a Sarah Reyes question if I ever knew one.
Was it Lord Worth? I think it was Lord Worth. Because he really has to work to get her. And I think all my heroes basically have to kind of work
mm-hmm.
to get their heroine. They start out with assumptions, and their assumptions are proven wrong, and they have to reorganize the whole way they're approaching this.
Mm-hmm.
Because what they normally do is just not working.
Yeah. And, as a reader, we love to watch our characters be built up, torn down, and built back up again.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the book that's coming out. Next year, there's a lot of that goes on. My heroine actually tells him that he's not a suitable mate for her. And he's married to a dukedom. Going, what?
What do you mean?
What do you mean?
Mm-hmm. That's so funny. Can't wait.
So yeah.
Well, and you've just, back in January, you launched a new series for you, The Marriage List, and then the Husband List. You have the second one coming out in that series next month. Can you tell us a little bit about what inspired this series and what readers can expect from the Husband List?
This is actually a continuation of the Worthingtons. Okay, it's a marketing thing going in these kind of I guess, sub series kinds of things. So this is for readers of mine who've been reading me for a long time, know all about the twins of Madeline. So the twins are Lady Alice Carpenter and Lady Eleanor Carpenter, and they're Grace's sisters, Lady Worthington. And then there we go, Albert Stroke, as Sarah just said. And so, and then Madeline is Worthington's sister, Lady Madeline Fevers. And so when the books start out, they're all 12. And the twins decide that they're going to adopt Madeline as one of them, and they're going to be triplets. And so for now, because now they're 18. So for 6 years now, they have been pretty much inseparable. And they do everything together. And now they're having their season. And so for years also, Matt Worthington has been dreading the season. So we literally have everybody in the season. Everybody's there to kind of help. And I can't say I pick a character to come help, but usually it's one of the brothers-in-laws that steps up to help the hero kind of find his way through this maze, because you've got these 3 very strong young women who have made a list, and they're all using this list, but kind of adding a little bit to it as they go along. And finally, in the last book, well, we'll talk about this book. So this is Madeline's story, and she ends up marrying Harry Stern, who is Dottie's brother. And so that wouldn't, I mean, no one cares about that except her mother, who has a strong influence on her, because her mother kind of freaks out if you're trying to do something that's inappropriate. Fortunately, not their guardian, but of course she creates a lot of havoc when she does. And so Madeline is determined to marry a peer, her mother wants a peer, a lord of some sort, preferably an earl or higher, right? And Duke that's interested in her, everyone thinks, and she's trying her best to find somebody with a title that she can like, but she's really drawn to Harry. You know, Harry makes her laugh. Harry takes her out for ices. Harry's now in Parliament. He's a barrister. He's in Parliament. And he kind of gets her involved in some of the laws he's thinking about, like women's rights and the rights for soldiers and the poor and this kind of thing, you know. And her family is very liberal, close to the radical party, although they're Whigs. And so she's becoming closer and closer to him, but she's trying desperately to really like one of these other people. And then she finally gives up, decides, you know, she doesn't know if he really loves her because he hasn't said anything, but they're all going to be at a family picnic and she's going to ask him. So they end up getting engaged. I think it was very cool because the little kids were in the bushes watching, and you could hear them kibitzing. He kissed her.
Cute.
And she starts to say, "Do you?" And she gets the L out. He says, "Desperately." You know? It starts, and then the kids are, and then they engage themselves to each other. And the kids were running out of the bushes telling everyone, Harry and Madeline are getting married.
I love it.
So her mother doesn't know that, but her mother's getting an inkling that she's interested in Harry. And so she tells Madeline that if she decides on Harry, that she'll ruin him. And then of course Madeline stands up and becomes she just looks at her mother and says something to the effect of, that would be a mistake, and walks out of the house. And then the 2 youngest, Mary and Theo, decide they're going to get involved, and they go to see Bellamy. They all go to see mother. But it's not until her husband comes back to the house and sees her crying and wants to know what's going on. He's already spoken with Worthington and Harry, and they had all his financials and everything. And then Harry's grandmother, who's the Duchess, gets involved, or kind of was involved, but off the pages. She had arranged for them and had redone the house and that kind of thing. So it's basically, I won't say a typical working book, because I'm not sure there is a typical book, except for the fact that you do have family involved in everything. Um, it's, I think it's funny. It's got some very poignant moments. I found myself crying a couple times and then laughing. But yeah, so that's kind of what it's about. I have no one line thing to tell you about this.
I love it. Well, you touched on something that I do think is such a crucial part of your books, which is family. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about like the challenges, but also the reward that you get of creating these really cool families and these really intricate families. But also like the challenge that comes with that, because you've got to infuse them with such character and such excitement, but also not get bored by them yourself as the writer.
Yeah, I think it helps that my books were all very character driven. And so when their books came out, you knew what their personalities were. You watched them grow, you watched them figure out what was going on, you watched them kind of mature into a good husband and a good father. And you get to see all the 4 and 5 year olds now in these 3 books, and they have their own personalities. You've got Hugh, for example, who can't resist kind of talking with food on his fork, and it gets thrown across the table. and his sister, who's his twin, is very good, sighs and goes, "It's okay, Papa. I'll tell him. I'll teach him." And then you've got Worthing's son, who's actually the oldest by just a few months of all of them, and even though he's the son of an earl. He's kind of in charge of everybody, kind of like Worthington is in charge of everybody, whether they're a marquis or a duke, kind of taken on that role with the children, so you kind of get to see all of them. And because this is kind of going to go on for a while, kind of like the Stephanie Lawrence books.
Well, good. It's a good thing to have.
So, you get to see everyone grow up. It's I think it's harder kind of, since I never was able to afford a series Bible when the books started coming out. I've had to keep lists. And so this gets a little bit iffy. And it's also hard to make sure that not everybody is involved, because that gets very confusing for people.
Yeah.
So I kind of sit back and I wait to see who is going to come forward. Either on the female side to help with a heroine, a family member, up until now a family member. Now I'm getting the next book that I'm writing is Charlie's book, or helping the hero. So with this book, it's Kenilworth who is helping Harry, and the last book it was actually more Rothwell who was helping Montague. So yeah. So it's interesting to kind of see them. And then you've got byplay. So for example, in the last book, you had Rothwell, who's the Duke, making a stupid bet with Kenilworth, who basically always wins, because Rothwell, even though he's a Duke, is still kind of naive, and Kenilworth was on the town for a long time. So he picks up 500 pounds here and 500 with there from his brother-in-law. Kind of this byplay going on of these characters, and then Grace, who's always around to kind of pick up all the pieces, and you've got Charlotte stepping in this one as well. So it's, I think I've forgotten the question. I'm not sure I answered it. It's just kind of stepping back and seeing who's going to take that role. So I don't think I have as much to do with it as I would like to, in a way. I don't say, you're going to do this.
They just tell you.
They just kind of tell me. Yeah.
Well, that's a great segue into our next section, which is our fresh fiction facts portion of our interview. And one of our questions actually is like, how do your characters come to you typically? Do you hear them? Do you see them? Do you feel them? How do they normally come a knocking?
Well, in this case, I've known a lot of the characters for a very long time. And so they talk to me.
Mhm.
When it comes to, it was interesting to me that all three heroes showed up in the first book of this kind of, of the marriage list.
Mhm.
And we had real difficult times with Alice and Montague, which comes out next year. But yeah, I sometimes I see them first, like Phoebe, I saw her. Sometimes they talk to me more. Mostly it's the guys who talk to me.
Interesting.
The women actually come to me in person in my mind. And the guys are kind of like whispering in my ear.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. It can almost like hear them
Mhm.
currently talking in this ear.
That's
Like
so cool.
and that's how they usually do it. Now the kids, I see the kids. I can see the kids around the table. I can see the kids running around playing. I can see them arguing because already the boys are trying to figure out what's going on with the girls.
Mhm. Mhm.
Girls formed a bond and the boys have formed a bond. And that's something that the older members of the family pick up on, especially the men. They say basically their bond will last the rest of their lives. They'll have each other to rely on, to go to Eton, go to Oxford or Cambridge with. They'll have that.
Yeah, they'll always have each other.
Yeah, they'll always have each other, and the girls will always be together too. Of course, the girls now say they're not going to marry; they're going to go on a grand tour.
Of course. I was like, of course they are. How sweet, how cute.
Of course. And all the papas are saying, that's very good. You just keep that thought. You're not going to get married.
Mhm. Exactly.
Right.
Oh, so funny.
So that's how it's kind of been going. Now, Charlie, I know I see because I've known him for years. The heroine in that book, this is the one I'm writing now, a little kind of murky. And I actually saw Charlie's eyes. So I got the feel of a kind of like a banty hen, a little on the side, a little on the chubby side, not young, 22 maybe, brown hair, brown eyes. And I usually don't write brown eyes. But then I see her through Charlie's eyes. And although a banty hen is his initial impression, he notices the golden highlights in her brown hair, amber of her eyes, and how her strong but well arched brows seem to look at you in disapproval.
He likes to be challenged.
Yeah. So it kind of, I guess it's kind of depending on where we're going with these from now on. But yeah, mostly the guys that I don't know from before will whisper in my ear.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. What is your favorite time of day to write?
I prefer to write. I used to write in the afternoons and write late, but that was when my husband was working elsewhere. Now to get up and have breakfast, check the news, and then start writing. So, and that's what I like to do. And then I'm finished around. I finish when I have a chapter written. Okay, so it can be an hour, it can be 2 hours, it can be 5 hours, it can be all day.
Yeah, but the chapter, whatever's coming from that day.
Yeah. I'm got a year now to get this book to him, almost a year, 10 months now, I guess. And so I'm playing with the idea of writing 2 or 3 chapters a week and seeing how that goes. Lately it's been a little bit hard to write because everything has been in total disarray with the boat and everything else. That's a whole other story. When I get back, now that I'm going to be back from this trip, I'll have a few days when I can actually get some writing done. We're going to be sailing from down the coast of Corsica and to Sardinia.
Very cool.
We've got to be down there in Caligari by the end of the month because we're flying back to Bolzano to get our Permessi di Soggiorno, our Italian residence permits. So we've got to fly back, and we've got a young American PhD student, young, he's 30, coming to take care of the dog and the cat. Had him over for Easter.
That's so cool.
Very cool guy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What is your favorite time of day to read?
In the evening. I used to, before I started writing, I used to be able to get up in the morning, pick up a book and read all day. I remember when they re-released the Dorothy Dunnett Niccolo series, and we were in England. I got all the books, and on the weekends, I would just get out there in the morning and start reading at breakfast. And my husband walked in one time. We had a conservatory, and I was reading in there, and he says, "You didn't tell me when you got these books that, bye, honey, I'll see you in 3 months."
He should have read the fine print. I don't understand what his problem is.
Well, and we bonded. One of the things we bonded over was reading.
Oh, yeah. So he knew. Mm-hmm.
And our son's a big reader. So unfortunately,
so cool.
Granddaughter has a processing problem. And I can't remember what it's called right now, but it has to do with, she said she can't see words.
Oh.
But she can't picture. She can't read the words and make the picture in her mind.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Which is very sad.
Yeah.
It's very rare, but it happens. She works the same way with numbers. Some people can't recall people that they love in their mind. She's not bad like that, but she's got these two where she can't visualize them in her mind.
It just doesn't click in her brain.
It just doesn't click in her brain. So
yeah. Can she do audiobooks? Does that help her a little bit?
She does a lot of YouTube. Like if she wants something, she puts up a YouTube video and figures out how to do it.
Yeah, that's cool. I do the same thing. That's me too.
Yeah. I'm kind of thinking that the graphic books might be a good idea. Comic books, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she needs that picture.
She needs the picture. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we heard about this over the winter. We found out about this. And so I'll see her I'll see her in July. And so I'll find out more about it then. Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, Ella, before I turn this over to our readers to ask you some follow-up questions, where can readers stay in touch with you and find out more about you?
EllaQuinnAuthor.com. EllaQuinnAuthor.com. All my links are on there to everything, to my mailing list, which unfortunately I don't send out to all that often, to all my social media stuff, to the Worthingtons group, to another group that I have called Regency Romance Fans that I have to start taking more charge of. I have a couple of people helping me run the group, but I usually do Regency trivia on there. So there's a history of that, but I have to start doing that again. We've had, with the move to Italy this past year, and then the holidays, and then I'm having to learn Italian. So there's just been a whole lot of stuff going on, taking up my time, and then book deadline.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then your job.
Yeah, then my job.
Yeah.
Well, that's book deadlines. Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
that's what I meant. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
And then getting the boat ready to sail, because we haven't really sailed her for a while, and she had a lot of things. Our fuel tank, we found out when we went down in March that we had a leak in the fuel tank, and it emptied into one of the bilges. So we had to have a fuel tank back. You can't just go buy one.
Yeah.
They've got to make them.
Oh my gosh. That is so much stress.
A lot of stuff going on.
Well, hopefully you get to enjoy your weekend this weekend and not have to worry about the boat stuff for a little bit.
Yeah. And
well, awesome. Exactly. Well, Ella, thank you so much. I'm going to turn this over to our readers to ask you some follow-up questions off camera.
Okay, great. Thank you.